Well, it's always good when we start when we're laughing, right?
Yeah.
It's like 5 seconds ago, I say to Mike, "Are you ready?" And he says, "Yeah." And then right then he does a giant clearing of his throat or whatever.
Now I'm ready.
Oh God, my ears, Mike, my ears. But we're on later than usual, and it's my fault.
It is your fault.
Just yesterday, I was praising Comcast like for the whole pandemic.
Nobody's ever done that before.
I know, but like our internet's been good for the whole pandemic, and so I was just saying to somebody, "Hey, Comcast really came through." And then today, boom, no internet this morning. So, yeah. Anyway, how you doing, Mike?
I'm doing all right. Glad we are on the down slope of the week. Week seemed less crazy than previous weeks, but I don't know. Maybe that's just a head fake.
Probably is. Probably is. All right, man. So there is a lot going on, and we say that every week, but it happens to be true.
Mhm.
And I'm going to ask you about the big stories. But first, I want to remind everybody we're doing free security awareness training tomorrow. We did an awesome webinar yesterday with our friend John Delano about third-party risk. We meant to do it
really good.
Yeah, we meant to do it for hospitals, but like all these other folks showed up, so we talked about third-party risk for manufacturing, third-party risk for cities and counties, and it was really good. Obviously, third-party risk is a really big deal for healthcare because, doctors or, whoever, bring in a new MRI machine. It's not safe. Bad things happen in a hospital. Nobody wants bad things in a hospital. And, as always, I think I mentioned this last week, we're the first preferred provider for the American Hospital Association and the only preferred provider of managed detection response. So, yay. All right. But we're here to talk about, cybersecurity. Mike, what's going on this week, man?
I do think there were fewer jaw droppers this week than last week, but there are some. Let's see. There was this one was good. There's 3.2 billion passwords leaked. 1.5 million of those are government: U.S., U.K., Australia, Canada, and Brazil. Okay, which one of these things is not like the other, I think.
Thanks for that Sesame Street lesson.
Sure, yeah. Add to that the tool that somebody came up with that can be used with Facebook to scrape data and associate Facebook identities with all of the email addresses they have. And all of a sudden, we've got this potential for, just tons of mayhem in the near future, likely. And to top that off, a password manager called Password State, and I don't know, I've never heard of that before, but apparently it's got a lot of customers, was compromised. Actually, the update mechanism was used to install malware. So what they did was they compromised the update mechanism. Not the first time this has happened. And so now the perps have access to something like 29,000 organizations. Theoretically, we don't know if they have access to all of those, but that don't look good.
Well, and that's really not good. I mean, at security awareness training, every time we do it, people are like, "Hey, should I use a password keeper?" And we always say yes, because I mean, it still is less risky than making all of your passwords, Mike Hamilton 123, or yours are probably all like drummer 123.
No, mine's Deloitte 1. Okay, that's actually a famous password that you can find lying around on networks everywhere. I shouldn't have told everybody that.
Thanks, Mike. Mm-hmm. See, nice job, everybody. Don't listen to Mike. Don't listen to Mike. We're gonna have to delete. We're gonna have to delete this recording now. There have been a lot of stories about leaked account information over the last few months. We did a whole thing about Facebook and LinkedIn. Now this, it feels like this is really ticking up.
I think the information is going to be used for things like, account takeover, business email compromise, other ways of monetizing the data. I think it's probably got something to do with the fact that the federal government, is spreading a lot of money around and everybody's trying to fraud their way into that. I don't think this is going to be used for espionage. Countries have all the data they need, right? China has the complete contents of the Office of Personnel Management records from back in, 2015? So I think there's going to be criming. And speaking of business email compromise, BEC. This week we found out that business email compromise actually steals more money than ransomware, and that was a surprising result. Depending on the veracity of that claim. Maybe that's not so surprising.
I guess it happens quietly. Like it's
right. A lot of it goes unreported.
Yeah. Right. Sure.
Right.
It's
and
embarrassing.
Well, that was part of the focus of the article too. On the low end, it is really easy to do, right? Just send in a fake invoice and hope somebody pays it, right? Reported BEC numbers alone are over $1.8 billion for the US. And there's another 300 million in fraud that they could legitimately add to that number. So something like 2 billion, right? $2 billion a year through business email compromise. And, hi, I'm the CEO. I need you to buy these gift cards. Apparently that just works really well.
Yeah, I mean, ransomware gets all the notice because it shuts everything down and it affects a whole bunch of people, but fooling people into just paying an invoice or, rerouting something or saying, hey, I'm the CEO, send me some Apple gift cards or whatever, I guess it pays better. By the way, you still owe me some of those Apple gift cards. Didn't you have
on the way, man?
Just send them to me. And pay no attention to the Nigeria address. Just send them. That's where just in case anybody wanted to know, I joke about being in Seattle. Really, I'm in Nigeria. Didn't you have a stat for the total amount being lifted from the U.S. annually by cybercrime?
So I didn't have a stat. All I do is regurgitate stuff I've read. But somebody said $6 billion. That was the number I saw, which, I mean, that is really huge, right? The DoD budget is $7 billion. But if a third of that is BEC, that makes sense. And one more thing about ransomware. The whole encrypt the network tactic may be losing favor. You may have heard that Apple is being extorted for $50 million by the Revel ransomware as a service gang.
Didn't we decide it was Revel?
Whatever. There's no such thing as like a glossary of cyber criminal names. I think everybody makes up, what they think it is. Ryuk, whatever. Anyway, they have this intellectual property from Apple, and that's super valuable to them. So, rather than snarling up the network, they just go, you know what, we have the blueprints to all your products that we're going to share with your competitors. And boy, that gets some attention. So deadline for payment on that is May 1st. But the bigger story here is, I think that when these gangs go after the whales, like Apple versus local governments and schools, they're going to go after the intellectual property for extortion and not disrupt operations. And I think that's a little bit of a change in tactics that may be reproduced elsewhere.
I don't know. It feels like there are two groups of criminals out there. Some that have a heart and some that don't. Remember what was in Germany, that woman who died because of the ransomware at the hospital in Germany after they contacted the criminals and said, hey, you hit the hospital. They gave them the key. I mean, it seems, I don't know. We'll see. And this sounds like it's easier to pull off than shutting down a hospital or shutting down a network anyway. They don't have to manage all the cryptographic keys, which, is probably a pain in the butt. They probably keep them in that password manager that got hacked.
They probably do. Yeah.
Since that essentially functions as a business, it makes sense. They're looking for efficiencies, right?
All right. Exactly. They're trying to trim costs and, improve outcomes.
Whatever, Mike. All right. Okay. What else is going on this week?
Let's see. The Pulse Secure VPN keeps coming up, right? That gift really keeps on giving. There have been 3 vulnerabilities under exploit that should have been patched from 2019 and 2020. We've talked about them before. That's an awful fail. If you haven't patched that stuff, and then you went through the whole COVID, everybody gets remote access, and you never patched your VPN, man, that's a self-inflicted wound. But now there's a 0-day vulnerability being used to hack government and defense companies. So, if you use the Pulse Secure VPN, they've released a tool, the Pulse Connect Secure Integrity tool, I think, to help you determine if you've been whacked. So, hey, grab that and find out. There's also a botnet that's exploiting exchange server flaws that still aren't patched. Today, this botnet is not doing anything destructive. They're compromising as many internal systems as possible using the NSA's Eternal Blue exploit, and setting up miners for the Monero cryptocurrency. You know that's kind of benign and annoying when your computers get used to mine crypto. But if they have that much access, anything can happen, especially if they use, something like Eternal Blue, because that's going to worm its way around the network and get everything. So heads up. Exchange people who don't patch.
I learned two things there. One, that there's a cryptocurrency called Monero.
Yeah.
Is that like a mix of like money and dinero?
I think it is. Yeah, I think that's actually what that is. Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, see, at least we know how to pronounce that one.
Dynani. Never mind.
Mike. So, every week it seems like, things are about to tip over. I got to ask, if there's this much cyber going on and nation states are better at it and they'd like to wreck our economy, why isn't something really big ever happened, like broad scale disruption that would really put a dent in our ability to recover?
That's a great question. I would say it's because they want the money. Whether it's North Korea stealing millions from banks outright, or the way Russia looks the other way toward their criminal culture, because of the cash that brings into the country and the cash they take away from our country. They don't want that disrupted. So a large event that, clearly damages a broad section of the economy is going to be met with policy that gets real nasty. So, better not rock the boat too hard if you want, the money machine to keep working. I think that's got everything to do with it. I think, it's possible to disrupt crime to the extent where it would move away from crime into more disruption. And I bet that's a calculation that goes through policymakers' heads.
I guess that makes sense. That makes sense. Hey, there were a couple of really good pieces that you had in your daily email, the blast this week.
Yeah.
One of them was about
just a couple.
Yeah, you put a lot in there, but there were really only two I read, Mike. There's the one about this weird Pentagon IP space thing, and there was the one about the Postal Service. Like, what?
Yeah, these were interesting. Start with the U.S. Postal Service. One thing I did not have on my cyber bingo card was the United States Postal Service running a covert operations program to monitor American social media posts. No kidding. They're looking for inflammatory postings and sharing that information with other government agencies. That's super interesting because of the authorities' problems that we've talked about here. The NSA cannot legally surveil Americans, and DHS isn't really tooled up to do it, and it's not in their mandate. They protect the homeland, not assist law enforcement. Sometimes they assist law enforcement. But since the USPS mission includes hands-on access to American data, it kind of makes sense. Now, what they're classifying as inflammatory and whether or not there is a political overlay there, those questions are not clear. But wow. I mean, really, wow.
Yeah. I mean, that's yeah. Wow, indeed. And the Pentagon, you glossed over the Pentagon IP.
Oh, yeah, I did.
I thought you were going to talk about. That's a weird one.
Yeah, I actually commented on a piece for this. So the Pentagon has a lot of IP space, and there's a lot that's unassigned, not being used. So what happened is this: a company was contracted during the last administration, and the Pentagon has routed close to 175 million addresses through that company, so that any activity to or from any of those addresses has to pass through the company. That event occurred 3 minutes before the previous administration left office. The Pentagon says this is to, what they say, assess, evaluate, prevent unauthorized use, identify vulnerabilities, All right, so that may be true. they may just want to see if the space is being used by unknown actors or, whatever. They may want to set up honeypots to trap activity, but that doesn't make sense because the whole world knows this is going on right now. Everybody knows what, the Pentagon's IP space is. It's easy to look up. The competing theory, and the more interesting theory, I think, is that, again, bypassing the lack of authority given to the NSA for domestic surveillance and to do the testing required to scale a surveillance infrastructure, right? 175 million addresses is kind of, the activity of everything in the United States, user activity in the United States. So, 175 million, what would it take? What kind of computing resources would it take to be able to sniff that much traffic and pick those needles out of the haystack? So the political overlay, again, is the question. And the company, Global Resource Systems LLC, has no experience doing anything like this, which does not instill confidence. So,
well, why would you want somebody with experience?
To get the work product that you're contracting and to be right. Okay. So this could be the U.S. using a private sector cutout to provide a workaround for domestic surveillance, right? NSA can't do it. Apparently the USPS can, but here's another way to do it. It could also be for plausible deniability, right? So, for example, there's a good chunk of China's IP space that's adjacent to these 175 million addresses. So an oopsie with a BGP route means we're routing that Chinese traffic through us. But hey, the government didn't do it. This company over here did. So this is all very strange, and this is one that really bears watching. We need to track this one.
I can't figure out whether to be terrified. I think I'm terrified, but I don't know how to feel.
Yeah, well,
and one thing I never do is ask Mike Hamilton how I should feel. So we're not going to ask you. Yeah, I mean,
I wouldn't tell you.
I'm not sure hiring a company that whatever. Hey, yeah, we'll come back to that. All right. We're almost out of time for this week. And at the end of all these, we do a kicker, which is the story that makes you smile in the end. Mike never makes you smile. I do want something from our viewers, though, which is I need a new car. There was a crash. I wasn't driving. There was a crash. Nobody got injured. Everything's fine, but the car's totaled. So I'm curious, what car should I buy? Have family, so don't tell me Corvette, which happens to be the #1 selling car at the end of the pandemic. So put it in the chat. I'm curious. What the heck should I buy?
1971 Ford Pinto.
And no, Mike, no. See, I knew you weren't a security person. If you weren't, you wouldn't. That's not secure.
Okay.
All right. So give me the kicker while people tell me what car to buy.
All right. After thinking about it this week, and there are some things that happened this week that actually are not funny, and one of those is the passing of Dan Kaminsky at 42, the guy that discovered the DNS bug that could have brought down the whole internet and worked behind the scenes to fix it. So, gonna miss Dan. A lot of people knew him, but this thing happened. There was a Google outage in Argentina. Google apparently wasn't watching their google.com.ar domain. The registration expired and someone picked it up for, and I'm not making this up, less than $6. That caused the outage, and it's interesting that the article does not mention what Google paid to get that domain name back, but I suspect there was a significant ROI on that investment. How was that?
That was pretty good. You're that makes you like 1 for 20, right?
1 in a row from Jake. That's awesome. I'll take it.
Hey, and somebody
means
else.
A lot coming from you, Jake.
Yeah, there you go. That's what they call mucho. Means a lot. It's fun. Somebody emailed me, Jake at ci.security, and their suggestion is go for the Corvette and see if it can tow a trailer with the kids in it. So I will keep that under advisement.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Well, thanks for joining us. Mike, I think we'll do this again next week. What do you think?
Let's do it on time next week. I like it in the morning.
All right, fine. We'll do it in the morning next week.
Okay.
All right, everybody. See you later. Bye.
Bye.